Welcome to the Indomitable podcast. I'm your host, ciruolo, and today we have another great episode that will leave you inspired. Today's guest is the indomitable Natalie Micale. Natalie is a professional executive coach, leadership consultant, speaker, and former healthcare executive. With over 20 years of experience as a leader, she has seen firsthand the gender and racial disparity between those who perform the vital work of those industries and those who decide how that work is performed. As an executive coach, she now leverages her experience in personal development and leadership presence to help historically marginalized and underrepresented people gain access to higher levels of influence and authority. Natalie was a featured speaker at the 2023 Speak Up Women Conference and is the co-founder and host of the Empowerment Collective, an in-person networking and speaking experience for women in Asheville, North Carolina. Wow. Well, hello, Natalie. I am so grateful to have you here.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I would love it if you could just share a little bit about yourself with those people who are listening so that we don't leave them in our dust here when we go off on casual conversation.
Yeah. So thank you for the intro. It's totally accurate. I wrote it all. And also, there's so much more, right? There's always so much more.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and I've lived here for a while. I live with my husband, 2 dogs, brand new adopted cat. That's a whole situation we've never done before. So, I'm an executive coach, and I work largely with women, but I also work with a few good men. I get to be picky.
Yeah.
And I worked as a clinician at the bedside for several years before moving into leadership roles. So that whole bit about being aware of the differences between the people who provide the care versus the ones who make the decisions about the care, what really came through. It's a very firsthand experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I get why. So tell me a little bit about that experience, just working at the bedside of folks and seeing sort of firsthand the disparity in, not even just like who's making the decision, but like what the outcomes are between people.
Most of my career, I was a dietitian in the ICU, and a lot of people are like, what the hell does that mean? Because we think you're on ventilators and all of these things, and how are you eating?
Right.
And that's exactly the point, right? That's the question. How are you eating? You're being fed through your tubes or your veins. And I would be the person that would come and write the orders for that, determine the amount of, what kind of stuff they needed and all of that. My career was slightly different, where I worked much more closely with the other healthcare providers and the medical staff, more so really than even the patients, because a lot of my patients were intubated and sedated. So it was seeing how the teams worked together and the communication needed. And so I did that for several years and eventually started to get a little burnt out. You can never say bored in the ICU.
No.
Never quiet and you're never bored. Those are bad. Don't say that. But I got to be a little bit burnt out and realized that there was a lot of leadership opportunities in healthcare. And so I started moving up in that way. And I progressed really quickly through the leadership ranks and had a wonderful career. And was in a leadership position when 2 really big things in my life happened, but the most recent one being COVID.
Yes.
When COVID hit healthcare, a lot of very difficult decisions had to be made. And I was part of the team making those difficult decisions.
Right.
And not everybody who has a say in what happens has the experience of working at the bedside and with teams of other clinicians and medical staff.
Right.
So that was that was a turning point in my career, really. I started to see what the staff needed, and it wasn't, it wasn't pizza parties and little pens saying healthcare heroes. Although honestly, I'll take a nice pen any day. I love that.
I mean, right.
It was things like different recognition programs and different opportunities to develop their skills. And I was really fortunate that during COVID, it was a little bit of like a free-for-all, whatever you could do to help.
Yes.
Wanted you to do. So I started a lot of different programs for our healthcare system, just because we had never been through this before. So you have a cool idea, execute on it. Let's do it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So me just being an ADHDer, I'm linking together in my mind the fact that you probably went from being in a situation where so much was needed and where it was so urgent that the burnout must have been just constant. You must have been constantly working through that. I'd say probably everybody around you would have been working through that as well. What were some of the ways that you compensated for that kind of thing?
I would come home in the evening and just be so bothered by the way everything was happening. And, really to no one's fault. It was just
Right.
a crazy, wild time. I
Right.
would come home and just
Global
think,
events.
yeah,
Yes.
I would just start
Yeah.
thinking, like, what can I do to make it even a tiny bit better? And it was little
Mhm.
things like I started a public speaking course in our healthcare
Yes.
system
Great.
because it just people had mentioned, I've heard people say that, they really have a hard time having to present to leadership staff, and it was making them nervous, and they had all of these ideas but didn't feel comfortable expressing them.
Right.
So I started different cohorts of public speaking classes for anybody, all
Wow.
levels of, didn't matter if you were in leadership and executive, or you were a clinician, or if you worked as a dietary aide, it didn't matter who you were, you could come to this class.
Right.
I also became the chair of our employee engagement committee, which, man, I picked a
Oh.
interesting time to wade into those waters.
I'm
I also,
laughing at you. I'm laughing because I lived there as well. Not
right?
in healthcare, but in tech. And I'm remembering, I
Same.
think we called ourselves like global trauma cruise ship directors, right? Like,
Yes.
whew,
Yes,
yeah,
I was given the opportunity to become a certified crucial conversations trainer. So I was doing a
yes,
lot of executive coaching in that way with other healthcare executives, helping them have these really difficult conversations with their
yes.
staff. And, I'm glad you brought up ADHD a second ago, because that's the other piece of my story that really is the through line with everything that I do now.
Yes.
We'll go back to the day, way back in the day, which if you probably will understand. I mean, I was not a good student. I barely graduated high school. I had a really difficult time even getting into the college that I wanted. I didn't know what was going on. I was born in 1980. We didn't talk about these things.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like the kid who couldn't pay attention. Um, when I was in college, not doing well, having a really hard time, started having anxiety attacks
Right.
and like really bad migraines and all of these things that felt, I knew they
Yeah.
weren't right. I knew it wasn't just I'm screwing up. There was something going on. So I went to the doctor, and I really was like, well, I guess I have anxiety now. And I guess I hopefully don't have a brain tumor or whatever.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, I don't and didn't. But about 5 minutes into the exam, the doctor started asking me questions that for me, it felt really strange. I was like, why are you asking me about my grades? Like, I'm
Yeah.
20 years old. Why are you asking me about that? Why are you asking me about my ability to follow instructions?
Right.
But it was because he saw something that everybody else saw, but didn't really know how to diagnose.
Right.
And that day I was
Yeah.
diagnosed with ADHD, or ADD, as it was called back in the day. And so I started on medication, and my life
Mhm.
changed. I
Right.
suddenly became smart. I was
Mhm.
charming. I could get things done, all of this stuff.
Right.
Um, and life was awesome, right?
Yeah.
Life was great. I
Yeah.
got a great
Yeah.
internship. My whole life felt aligned. And then let's fast forward about 15 years. I started a new job in healthcare, and it required a very, very extensive physical, which
Mhm.
involved an ECG and
Yeah.
measuring
Yep.
your heart. And immediately, the nurses who were performing it, it was one nurse, and then soon it was two nurses because she called somebody else in. And she said, anybody ever told you about your heart condition? I was like, I'm sorry, what?
My what?
What? Am I
Yeah.
what now? Huh? I was only 30, I was 34.
Yeah.
They did a whole bunch of different things there, what they could do in the clinic, but I was not allowed to start my job until I saw a cardiologist. They would not clear me. Turns out I had one of the fairly rare, or just, it's a side effect of the ADHD medications,
Mm.
a prolonged heart
Prolonged
rhythm,
you. Yeah. Yep.
that prolonged QT that can lead to stroke and death. So, I mean, I'm forever grateful that we found that before any of those
Right.
things happened.
Mhm.
But what that did mean is I had to stop taking my meds immediately.
Yes. Yeah.
My career was on fire. I was in a leadership position. Everything was great.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that everything I had worked hard for was about to go down the drain because I remembered how I used to
How it
be.
was before.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that began my little personal journey
Mhm.
into, self-discovery, figuring out who I am and what I need to be the best version of myself, which
Right.
is what I help people do now. So it's funny how all the pieces fit together in hindsight, right?
Yes. Yes. I'm imagining just how pissed I was when I first tried medication. And I'm like, all of you all this time have just been living this way? Really? Like, and you've been saying to me, oh, you can't live up to your potential and da da da. And I'm just like, I was so mad. I was so mad when I first did
how easy life is. Like, I remember feeling like that. Like,
oh
whoa,
my God,
I
yes.
can do this better and faster than almost anybody else now. That's
You
crazy.
can do a week's worth of work in one day. Yes,
Girl.
exactly. Oh my God, I was so mad. I was
Yeah.
so mad. And many times I've had that conversation where I would just, I have to tell people that are, neurodivergent, when they say give 100%, they do not mean your 100%. They
Yes.
mean their 100%. If you are giving your 100%, you burn out. Like, do not give your 100%. They don't know what they're asking for. Right?
That is such a good point.
Yeah.
That is such a profound point right there, because I wasn't diagnosed early. I was diagnosed kind of later.
Yes.
I mean, I was a fully formed adult by the time I was diagnosed. So I was used to feeling like I was giving my 100% unmedicated, which was everything, but also not enough sometimes. And then when you have the right medication and you learn how to operate in the world,
right?
It's off the charts.
Yes,
we're incredibly productive, but highly productive does not equal happy all the time.
No, a lot of us are. A lot of us went from like having full-time jobs to being consultants for things, right? Because we can pick our own hours and we don't have people coming in and using us as a tool the same way they would potentially use other employees, thinking that, oh, this is the same. And it's not the same for us, right? Like, we don't need our entire day filled because we just do more. It's just how our brains work. And somehow that usually ends up badly for us because a lot of times leaders and executives aren't trained in what neurodiversity is or how it works. So they will start giving us more to do, right? You'll be doing the work of 2-3 people before you're burning out 3 months later, and you're part of that neurodivergent employment cycle again, where, now you're not doing as much, and that must be your fault. But what more can you do? How do you deal with that? How do you advise people to be better in a world that kind of isn't made for us?
Yeah. One of the most important points is we all have natural strengths. We all have things that we do better. Like, there is something you do better than anybody else. You probably know what it is, but it may have taken you a while to figure it out because it's so innate and natural for you.
Right.
And then there are things for everybody that just don't come as naturally, but they're a part of the job.
Yes.
You have to make sure that your entire career is filled up with more of those things that come naturally to you.
Yes.
And that you are really, really good at, where you are working in your zone of genius. If you can work in your zone of genius and be rewarded for that, you will have such a long, happy, fulfilling career, or as long as you want it to be. You'll have a very successful career. But if you are constantly feeling like you are paddling upstream because, let's say you're very relationship oriented, but your job requires you to just execute on a bunch of different things and not be very transactional, you aren't going to be happy. And when you're not happy, especially when you're neurodivergent or specifically ADHD, if you are not able to get into that zone of like hyper focus,
right,
get into that flow, it's going to feel like a trudge. You're constantly struggling. And it is. I see it really, most of my clients are women who are at like a director, VP, or executive level. And at least half of my clients have ADHD also.
Of course.
Because they're incredibly productive.
Right. Incredibly productive and self-aware, right? Like, a lot of us, that's all we do. Like, we have to be the most self-aware community that exists, because a lot of us can't even do like regular cognitive behavioral therapy because we're just so like, we're like, no, I know why I do that.
I focused myself into reading a book over the course of 8 hours. I read 2 books about it. Yeah,
no, totally. Now I'm at expert level. Now what do I do? I became an expert this weekend in knitting. Like, now what do I do with that? No, absolutely. Yep, that's absolutely how we do. You were talking a little bit about how people making the decisions aren't really the ones executing on the decisions. And of course, you and I both know from working with companies that that's just not the way to do it. Talk to me a little bit about how that process goes and where you see room for improvement.
The biggest missing piece in the ranks who make the decisions and the people who really perform the work is communication.
Yes.
And that is, and I don't mean like, well, I sent emails out about it. Great. Awesome. Because you need to see my email box, right? Like it's a mess. Like, like I need more than that. It's really having those difficult conversations in the moment, or being willing to call a meeting with some people who, say you're the COO or something of a healthcare system or of a tech company. If you are making decisions, operational decisions that are going to affect, if the end user is, say, like the nurses or whatever, you have to talk with them and you have to hear them out. And it has to be in a setting where they're allowed to say something and it requires your immediate response.
Right.
This whole, like, I delivered a message and now I want to hear your response via email 2 days later. That's not it.
Yes.
We have to be willing to step into those tricky waters and have those conversations that can go badly, where people are going to say things you don't want to hear. And so it's the willingness to get uncomfortable and just sit with that, that stuff you don't want to hear, but that is the truth of the situation on both sides.
Of course. Yeah. I think a lot of times one of the hardest human skills to develop is having those uncomfortable conversations, because you have to be able to not only listen, but respond in a way that shows that you've been listening, shows that you have empathy for the people that you're talking to. How do you go about developing those skills?
The first thing is to keep in mind is, I have a little sticky note that says this: direct and respectful. Direct and respectful.
Yes.
And oftentimes people think that you have to choose one or the other. You do not have to. You actually have to have both. To have a good conversation that inspires dialogue, where you're going to have the back and forth. You need to be direct so that people know what you're talking about and what you need from them. But respect it has to be a given. Respect, I think, respect is, there's a whole lot of thing of like, oh, you have to earn my respect. And that's true. That's true. But you don't have to earn me treating you respectfully.
Right.
Because respect is a reflection
you don't start with disrespect and then earn your way to respect. That's abuse behavior, friends. Like, what?
Exactly. That is some like a weird abusive behavior that has almost become normal in our culture.
It has. Yes.
It is not the way.
It's not the way
I treat you, the way I treat anybody is a reflection of my character.
Yes.
And I think there's that taking that personal responsibility of communication it's everybody's responsibility. And people communicate differently.
Yes, absolutely.
But if you go into it with from the onset of, I'm going to be direct and respectful.
Yes.
Direct may look different to different people. Respectful can look a little bit different, but baseline, it's got to be there.
Yes. I think sometimes this is one of the places where neurodivergent people crash into problems, because people will say they want you to be direct, but they do not want you to be direct. A lot of times what's happening is you will just say the truth, right? You will just say, and not even in a way that would be considered disrespectful, right? Just in a, the sky is blue, and people will be like, oh, like, why did you say it like that?
Talk about that around here.
Like, why did you do it like that? And it's very interesting, because we run into that problem a lot. I know myself, I run into that problem a lot, because people will say, oh, I want your direct feedback. I want your real feedback. Don't be afraid of hurting my feelings, those sorts of things. And they are still at that place where any level of disagreement is disrespect, where any level of telling you, even just directly, casually, completely judgment-free, because we usually can do that pretty easily, is still considered disrespect. How do you train people to sort of manage up about what's considered disrespect, right? Because a lot of times in our workforces, managers are saying one thing, thinking one thing about themselves, but being completely incorrect, right?
This is something that, I talk about this a lot with my clients.
I bet.
And then
I
do a lot of like team training and different, different team leadership and communication training. This comes up without fail every single time.
Of course.
The first thing we have to do is look at, what do we really mean when we say we want you to be honest and direct?
Yes.
Are we being honest with ourselves?
Right.
And if we're not, you have to shine a light into that little cobwebbed corner and figure out what's going on there. Why is it that we are not able to hear something without being offended by it?
Yeah, triggered.
Exactly. And I think it's really important to recognize every single thing we have gone through in our lives or have endured, like those things stick with us. So often what we're seeing when somebody reacts negatively in the workplace is, we're seeing it could be some emotional immaturity.
Their trauma. Yeah. Their trauma.
Exactly. And there's a whole saying in the, I'm a certified crucial conversations trainer. And there's a saying in crucial conversations that if you don't talk it out, you will act it out.
Yes.
That's what we're seeing. And often those two things can still happen at the same time. You can talk it out, and then one person of this party is going to still act it out. Yes. And so then it goes back to the other person's responsibility to say, hey, I see that what I've said has upset you. That was not my intention. What is it that you need from me right now?
Right.
Can you tell me what it is that I said that made you feel this way?
Right. I'm sensing a change in your demeanor. Can we talk about that? Yeah. I think that's one of the funniest things, because I do better because of my trauma and all the therapy I have needed. I can sit in those conversations. They don't make me uncomfortable, right? They make me, it's where I really shine. That is why I have become attracted to the work that I do, in the same way that you are attracted to the work that you do. I always say that, like, if you don't deal with your shit, you're going to bleed on people, right? Like, you're going to bleed on people who didn't cut you, right? Yeah. I think that in order to have better and more inclusive workplaces for people like ourselves, we need upskills for managers in terms of how to take feedback, because that is not a skill that we are teaching right now, in my experience, in tech specifically, because everybody wants to be able to say whatever they're thinking without anybody getting upset. But that's not really the case. They don't want to hear whatever somebody's thinking without getting upset. They want to say what they're thinking without getting upset.
They just don't want you to get upset.
They just don't want you to get upset. That's exactly right.
What I want, and I want you to just be like, okay, that's a great idea.
I just want you to be fine with it. And it's like,
that's not how human brains work.
That's not how humans work. That's not how any of this works. No, you're exactly right.
You're exactly. Yeah. And it's the skills, the trainings at all levels, it is so important. And there's different aspects that become more important, with the being able to listen, to really hear the message is incredibly important at a leadership level. Yes. It's equally as important at the employee level as the individual contributor. But it's like, if you have a manager who isn't able to listen to you and isn't able to engage in a conversation that they may be uncomfortable with, it's hard for that employee to stay there and grow. There was something that came up with a client, at least over a year ago now, was this issue with her boss not really understanding her need for growth. Like, aren't you're not happy here? And it was like, for a year she had been having this conversation with him, but wanting more and wanting to take on different projects and wanting to maybe kind of help this department with this. And he was like, I don't understand. Is this not enough for you? Do you not like the work you do? And she's like, you're not listening. You're not listening. But saying you're not listening did not help him hear her at all.
Of course. You know what? As you're talking, I'm thinking you could have had the exact same conversation with a boyfriend that doesn't want you to leave and doesn't want to give you a ring. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just sitting there going, oh, this isn't enough. And you're just like, oh my God, I know exactly who this guy is in every other facet of his life.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Not just work.
Not just work. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. People are people.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's so wild. That's so wild. I think a lot of times people end up going from ICs, individual contributors, ICs, so into management roles without any sort of upskills, right? So we will see, especially, and this happens in my field a lot, especially in tech, where a company will grow from being like 5-10 people all the way, suddenly they've hit their seed round, they've got more money, they're hiring a bunch of people, and they go from like being a really small team to a very large team, and they don't sort of have any skills between where they were and what they need to be. And that's where I sort of see the biggest problems happening between employees and managers, because they're just like, they've got this title now, they've got all of these extra things that they need to be doing, including boxes that they need to be checking, right? They've got things that they need to achieve, and they're just doing it in the easiest way possible, which often leaves a lot of people, in their wake. What do you suggest when companies get bigger, when teams get bigger? What are some of the first things that they need to be doing in terms of those up skills?
Man, the first things, because there are so many things.
Yes. Have a conversation day one.
Like, we need to talk about what this means. What
What are your goals? Oh my God. Don't tell me what your values are. Jeez. Yes. I don't care what your values on the wall say, Ted. Yes.
That is it, right? Exactly. The words, that doesn't mean anything. It's how you
That doesn't mean anything. Yes.
Communication in a small company, you can communicate extremely casually. When you've got 5-10 employees, easy peasy, because you've probably known these people for a while, or
college or whatever,
see them on a regular basis, and they just kind of get you.
Yes.
The more your organization grows, the more formalized and the more like systemized and operationalized things have to become. And the people who found organizations and the people who take the organizations to the next level aren't always the same people. And they shouldn't be the same people all the time.
Yeah. No, they shouldn't.
Very different skill set needed. And so the ability to communicate, I feel like communicators are the people, like great communicators change the world for the better.
Absolutely.
And poor communicators, they cause a lot of problems, and particularly in organizations that are growing.
Yes.
So developing your communication skills, and a big part of communication skills is emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. You really can't have a lot of emotional intelligence without emotional maturity. And folks, that is why we go to therapy.
Absolutely.
That's why we go to therapy.
Yeah. Well, if you're the type of person that if somebody asks you a question, you are immediately defensive, that's going to be a problem for people like me, because I will tell you something that I'm not sure everybody is aware of. Neurodivergent people ask questions to gain information. Sometimes neurotypical people ask questions in a different way. They're more rhetorical questions, right? So like sometimes somebody will say to me, "Why did you do it like that?" And I'll just be like, "Oh, because of, X, Y, and Z." And then they're thinking I'm being offensive, but they asked a question. Do you know what I mean? I know it's a power thing. I know it's a sort of relationship thing, but it's very difficult to understand when you've actually been asked a question that, in fact, a lot of times neurotypical people will ask a question not expecting an answer. It's actually there's not really a word for this, like a statement of disapproval. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily seeking an actual answer. And I think that that's something we run into quite a bit, because when I ask somebody, "Why did you do it like that?" I am measuring whether or not I think your way of doing it was easier, better, smarter, and repeatable, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so, and I think that a lot of times people don't even realize how different the world is for people who aren't like them.
Yeah.
So,
anyway. I think something else that's really important to point out is a lot of people don't realize that they're neurodivergent.
Exactly.
And so they're trying so hard to operate in a different world when it's like, we're really not all that different.
No.
It's the expectations we have of how we behave and how we interact and how we do. And we're not really paying attention to what is the most effective way to interact with an individual person. We're thinking about, I'm supposed to do it this way.
Right.
And that leaves a lot of people out of the situation if we're just thinking about what is the way we're supposed to do it, which is why I am so I'm going to continue harping about communication, because when we communicate, that's how we gain information. That's how we're collecting data about how to work with this other person.
Yes. Yeah.
That's everything. That's everything.
It absolutely is. It's absolutely everything. If you are seeing somebody do something different than you, and that is making you feel a certain way, that's your perception. That's your perception of reality, which is not necessarily even reality. It's being colored by any number of things, your trauma, your past experiences, toxic workplaces that you've been through in the past, or even potentially but I think we struggle in these places where people are saying one thing and doing another.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got an open door. Come to me with anything.
Next time you come to me, make sure you have an answer. Don't come to me with problems. Come to me with solutions.
Come to me with solutions. And you're just like, okay, well, then I won't come to you until I have the solutions for the things that, you know what I mean?
I'll just fix it myself and
Or I'll just
apologize
fix it
later.
myself. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just fix it myself. But now you've just taught me something about this workplace. You've just taught me something about you. Yeah.
When you mentioned like if somebody says something and it's making you feel a certain way, this is where the self-awareness is really important, because whenever you're feeling that way, when we're feeling a certain emotion, that's like a trigger to us to evaluate that a little bit. Dig a little deeper. Why am I feeling so offended when this person continues to talk to me about this one thing? Why does this one thing really get to me? And
why is it bothering me?
That is like, what a wonderful, that's the whole reason we have emotions, right? We don't have them to be chaotic.
No.
We have them because they tell us things. They give us so much information, but only if we're willing to notice them in the moment and then evaluate it and dig deeper on our own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is so real, and it's so important. If you aren't dealing with your emotions, you're spilling them everywhere in different ways. And if you don't know that, then people are managing you. People are managing around you. And it's so incredible how much that kills a team. And I don't know how many times I've said it, like, always fire that person that everybody needs to manage around. Like, it does not matter how much work that person is doing. Believe me when I tell you, people are losing time, energy, efforts that could be going into your business just managing for this one person. And if that person is you, because you are just a logical being, it doesn't need emotions. Like, girl, come on.
Sure.
You know?
Yes, right? Absolutely. Because we are emotional beings. We are not logical. I mean, we can make logical decisions.
Yes.
Once we have acknowledged the emotions, but what is logic? Man, there's so much to dig into there, because it really is. And that is part of the, and like I said, I work with a few good men. I get to be picky about it. But there really is, that's like when we talk about the patriarchy, it's not just all men and, this bad masculine thing.
Oh God, no.
It's not that at all. It is that idea of when we can keep our emotions out of it, we make better decisions. And it's like, we can't keep our emotions out of it because we
never do. And if you think you are, that means you are doing the worst job of everybody.
Thank you.
Like, you're doing the worst job of everybody. Like, everybody else acknowledging that they have feelings, you not acknowledging it is the thing that makes you the worst of everyone. It's incredible to me that this is the sauce that we have sort of steeped everyone in and can't figure out why we are less successful than we want to be. Like, stop holding that stuff up, man. It's not doing anything for you.
Like, personal growth, man, personal development, that world is deep, and it can be fun. It can be great. And you have to do it consciously. You can't just read a book and be like, I'm good. You have to really do it consciously. And ask for help when you need it. And also empower it's really difficult to empower your team when you can't empower yourself in that way.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Because the stories and the things that we want to avoid the most are probably the things we need to hear the most. So walking around, tucking all that in, I don't want to read that book. I don't want to hear that story. I don't want to hear that feedback. That's all stuff that you need. That's all stuff you needed to be better that you avoided on the road. That's not making you better. That's making you slower. That's making you less good at what you want.
It's making you less happy.
It's making you less happy.
Yeah, it saps the joy when you have to feel like you're having to constantly like tamp that down. I firmly believe life should be fun, and you should have fun at work. You don't have to love every second of it. But if you are a person who is like, I hate my job, I can't wait till I'm done with this, it's time for you to find something new. There are enough things that need to be done in this world that we can do a better job of matching our skills with our careers. And that's like such an enlightened feeling when you have a job where you can do the things that make you come alive and not
Yes.
have to continue to squash things underground.
Right. But you'll never get there if you are lacking in courage,
Yeah. Oh,
because it's so easy to continue on the road that was laid out for you, right?
yeah.
Like, it's so easy to never self-reflect, never ask, never think, is this really for me? Am I really happy? Am I really doing the things I said I would be doing, the things I want to be doing? Or am I putting all of those things off to a time when it's going to be easier to make that choice?
Yeah.
Because there's never going to be an easier time to make that choice. Unfortunately,
No.
that's just not the way life goes. And who knows how we don't even know how long we have. You can't wait
Yeah.
for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Life takes courage to enjoy.
Ooh, that is so good. And that is 100%.
Yes.
100%. It really
Yes.
does. You can't wait for the perfect moment, because it doesn't exist. The perfect
It
moment
doesn't exist.
is when
It
you
never
decide
comes.
to take that step.
Yes. The perfect moment is now. That's all you
Yeah.
have. Yep.
Mhm.
What kind of people work with you? What's sort of the one thing they are saying to themselves, right now or in a conversation like this when they're ready to work with you?
They're usually saying, I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
Or I thought I would be happier where I am right now,
Yeah.
meaning in their career. And a lot of my clients, on paper, their jobs look perfect. They're
Perfect. Yes.
exactly what they think they're supposed to have.
Mhm.
Most of them are making exceptional money. Most of them
Yes.
are, financially very stable, more so than they
Mhm.
thought they would be. The
Yep.
fancy title,
Yes.
the big paycheck, the
Mhm.
career field, they thought,
Yeah.
I've made it. Why do I not feel happy and excited?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
usually it's that either the job itself isn't right for them, or they have the boundary issues. They've not upheld the boundaries that they need in order to be successful in this role, that they have become
Yes.
so burnt out,
Yes.
and they're not feeling like the best version of themselves in their jobs,
Yes.
even though, again, paper looks great. Everything's going for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
they're there, you know, still feels like a dead end, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that's the
I
thing.
have a
When you
lot of friends that get to the top of tech and
Yeah,
say, okay, now I'm here. Is this it? Why
now
aren't I
what?
happy? What do I do now? And it's so,
Yeah,
that's the place a lot of us are at right now, where we're taking a break from the field, because it used to sort of feel like you were solving problems, that you were
yeah,
solving problems in the world, that you were doing more, that you could go to bed every night knowing that you had moved the needle a little bit forward in the world for
yeah.
humans. And now, with so many money interests, with so many, it's really sucked all the fun out of it, right? Like, it sucked all the joy out of it. So now it's just another industry that's making money. And a lot of us feel really jaded by that. A lot of us feel very, disappointed in what we thought that this field was going to be, and what we thought our lives were going to be, and
Mhm.
who we were going to be once we achieved these goals. A lot of millennials, myself included, just like, wait a minute, I got all the way here, and now I feel like I don't have any joy in my life. Like, what? So
Mhm.
those are the types of people that come to you and they say, okay,
Yeah,
I got nothing left. What else is there? Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Most of my clients are in either healthcare or tech.
Yep.
And I think those
Exactly.
are the two that you get into because you have this passion and this
Yes.
desire to really do something big in the world.
Yeah.
And then you either jump ship early, or
Yeah.
you stay in it to the point where you're like, "Ah, I have seen the underbelly of this world, and it is not
Yes.
what I
Oh my
thought it
God.
would be."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, the amount of conversations I've just had where people are like, I have a friend who's like traveling South America right now. He's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm going back to that. And I'm just like,
Yep.
really? Like, the incredible work that you've done in your life. And you're just like, I'm out.
I
And I'm,
haven't
yeah, I
it's
just,
taking that, like, intentional career break. I
yeah.
have a client right now who is in Japan for
Hmm.
3 months doing a art apprenticeship. She was
Yes.
in tech. She was a tech
Yeah.
executive. She
Yeah.
quit
Yeah.
to go
I
do
mean,
that.
I was just asking a friend the other day, he was taking sort of an intentional career break. And I said, oh, hit me up when you find that passion project, because I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah,
Like, that's what we're doing right now.
yeah,
Millennials and especially people in those industries, we're
yeah,
finding our way to that joy again through like these amazing passion projects that we're cooking up.
yeah,
And I think that that's another amazing place for us all to grow to next. So I
yeah.
mean, I'm sad, but I'm excited. right? I'm also like, I'm sort of acknowledging the grief of what we thought was going to be the case, but maybe wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But being excited that we got to that place and we're like, okay, cool. We're gonna still shoot for joy. We're gonna still shoot for happiness in our lives. I think that's pretty great, actually. I mean,
It's
sad
wonderful.
as it is, but awesome, right? Yeah,
it is
perfect.
wonderful because the career field's going to be what it is because there is going to
Yeah.
be a little bit of that. There's more of like a churn and burn in
Yes,
both in
in
all industries,
all industries. Yes,
particularly tech and healthcare right now, for
yes,
sure.
yes,
And it's you get to a point where you're like, I have learned so much and I am so invested in this industry,
yeah,
but maybe not my specific career in this industry.
right.
So I have clients in healthcare that have started their own consulting businesses
Mhm.
for like regulatory things, or
Cool.
I have a client who left an executive nursing position to go travel, to be a travel nurse. Like go
That's
back
cool.
to the bedside traveling where you make really good
Yeah,
money, doing some hard ass work,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
puts you right back in the thick of it, where
Yes,
you originally had that passion. Then
yes.
like I said, I've got two clients right now that are on intentional career breaks where they are
Yep.
finding their passion project and I'm working with them through that process. So it's
Yes.
like it's people come to me through the lens of career. That's why they start working with me, but it never
Yeah.
stops there, you
It
know?
never stops there.
Never
Yeah.
stops there because
I mean,
it's never
shocking,
isolated,
right?
right?
Shocking that like, even though we were told that our whole lives that it was going to be the career, the thing that gave us joy, shockingly, that wasn't correct. And we're
No.
just like,
No,
yeah,
it
yeah,
actually is like the combination of who you are
yes,
personally and professionally
you
because
need
like
both.
spoiler alert, you're only one person
You're a
and
person. Yeah.
they have to be able to work together really well. They
Yes,
create the happiness and fulfillment in your life, your
that's
personal life
exactly
and
right.
your professional life together.
That's right. One
Yeah,
enables the other, one
totally.
creates more space for the other. Like, it's just,
100%.
it can't just be one. And to
No.
be honest with you, I have found that if you are making that kind of money that we all, wish we were making, I've never seen a situation where the person is being paid more than they're worth, right? Like, I've
Yeah.
never seen a person who's
Yeah.
not trading for that money, right?
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of times you'll see those people that are making that money living at the company or
Yeah.
never leaving or having no family, no lives, no activities, no hobbies.
Yeah.
And if you think about what you'd want to trade in your life to be making that sort of money, you always find that the companies are coming out ahead.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's just think about what you really want,
Yeah.
because they will never be paying you more than you're worth. Definitely follow your joy. So when people are at this place that we're talking about, how do they work with you? How do they get in touch with you? How do they follow you? How do they
Yeah.
ask you questions?
I'm everywhere. So I'm
Good.
everywhere. You
LinkedIn.
can at Natalie Micale Coaching, but really all of the social medias. One of the things that's so important that I want people to realize when they're reaching out to myself or somebody else who's like an executive coach or anybody that's going to help you through this process, 100% confidential.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's a free consult call, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a time for you to get everything out that you need to, like, what
Yeah.
is in the way? Tell me, tell me
Yes.
honestly, know that it's 100% confidential and that you coming to me for this free 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, listen, I love it when people work with me. That's always the end goal, right? Like I love a
Right.
new
Of course.
client. Let's nitty gritty. Let's get in there and fix it.
Of course.
I think people would be surprised how much talking very honestly and openly to a stranger about their situation, how
Yeah.
much just that does.
Yes. Oh,
Just
I
that
completely.
alone can be
Yep.
the thing that helps connect those dots for you. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but you can reach me at my website, which is nataliemccaulleycoaching.com. Typically, I work with people for either 3 months or 6 months just to
Yep.
get you over whatever that hump is with the
Mm-hmm.
option to continue. I have some clients I've worked with for a couple of years, others with
Mm-hmm.
3 months and done. Really just depends on what the initial, what
Yeah.
is it an acute issue? And if it's an acute issue, let's dig in. We'll fix that
Yes.
quickly. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a longer issue. Um,
Sometimes it's a lifelong issue. Absolutely.
Sometimes it is, and I'm
Absolutely.
happy to support both. And really, just I encourage people to think about don't. There's zero risk
Yeah.
in setting up that free consult call. There's
Yeah.
zero risk because the only risk is that it may unlock something in you that is going to inspire you to actually take action.
Right. Yes.
That's a risk we want to take.
Right. I love that. I love that, like, calculated risk.
Yeah.
I love that for people. I love that for y'all. Okay. So, y'all, Natalie has sent me those links and they are below in the show notes if you'd like to connect. And I am so excited and hoping that you do reach out to her. Y'all, thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Indomitable podcast for more incredible stories of humaning. Remember, my new book, Indomitable, A Foster Care Story, is available wherever you get your books. And thank you to all my Indomitable friends who came to see me on the road last week. Thank you for sharing your stories with me. I am so humbled by your trust and your support. If you have any upcoming events you'd like me to bring this experience to, please submit a request via my website. And finally, as ever, I am so happy to have y'all in community with me. Remember, together we are truly indomitable. Have a great week, everyone, and take care out there.